Good morning, guys. It's your buddy Choppadong coming at you with another little video here for an NHL slate the day after Valentine's Day. Hopefully, you don't feel too rejected by last night's lineups. I know I am. I had a bad night, but I had a couple of good nights before, so we're going to just keep rock and rolling, pressing forward with what we do. Usually, I save the longer slates for the videos because it gets more information out, but I've been waiting for a while to kind of go through a little bit of lineup building. I've got some VIPs in the DFS army that are asking a little, for a little bit of help there, some newer players, so hopefully everybody can get something out of this. I'm typically not a guru when it comes to this sort of stuff, sort of a jack of all trades, master of none. But I have found some ways to success and some quick ways to build competitive lineups over the past few months. So I've started just getting a little vocal about it. I like to share what I find out. You can find me on Twitter at Choppadong, and you can find me in the VIP Army in the Slack channels under the same moniker, one of the coaches, contributors, and whatnot. So there's more information in the description of this video or in the comments section about joining and becoming a VIP. If you like what you see, if you like what you hear, and you want to learn more, we're a community first place that likes to teach from the front. We don't really build lineups. We'll maybe show you how to build lineups. We're not going to build your lineups for you and just hand them out. We believe that there's pride in the work that you do and the research that you do, and we want to learn to become better players. So through that teaching, I kind of do these videos, show you where my thoughts are going, and we kind of go from there. The first thing I typically do, I'm going to run through some stats with you, then we'll jump in and we'll see if we can't get to some lineups. The first thing I do is I go to Vegas lines. I start looking for the entry level stuff. I'm not going to show you on screen today, but I wrote down Columbus is a 160 favorite, St. Louis is a 120 favorite, Calgary is a 135 favorite, and San Jose is a 160 favorite. There are some line movements. It's good to watch where the line opened and where it sits currently. You can kind of get an idea of what the sharp money maybe is suggesting or what the public money is suggesting. I can tell you that St. Louis is losing Vegas approval, and so is San Jose. Those lines are coming down a little bit more towards even. Right now, Columbus is probably the favorite on the board, and that leads us to Bobrovsky here, the Bob, as maybe a chalk goalie. But to be honest with you, he's been erratic lately, and I haven't really seen a whole lot in this matchup when it comes head-to-head. Kind of leads to suppressed shots as opposed to increasing shots. It's not really the highly active event night that we're anticipating. Even with this 6 over-under, I'm not saying fade the game. I'm not saying get out of it. I'm saying maybe temper some expectations a little bit. But to be honest with you, we're going to roll through. Toronto-Columbus does look like a good game on paper. You've got a couple of top-tier offenses, top-third offenses when it comes to shooting pucks. Toronto gives up shots like crazy. Columbus might get back on track here. They've been off a little bit lately. Both power plays are very, very strong. Neither one of the penalty kills is incredibly weak, so there might be something there. And in terms of points allowed, fantasy points given up and fantasy points earned, they're not really earning points. They're kind of right in the middle average, both teams, Toronto and Columbus. But in terms of giving up fantasy points to their opponents, they're both top 5 or bottom 5, if you will. They're both giving up a lot of points. So, again, there are some indicators here that this is going to be a game that we want to focus on. I don't know how heavily I would do it because when I looked at the head-to-head matchup, like I said, both these teams' shot totals get a little suppressed according to their average on the season. So even though they may be giving up points to other teams, they might not give them up to each other based on matchup, if that makes sense, and how the offense matches up against the opposing defense. If we jump over into the St. Louis and the Detroit game, this is a weird one. St. Louis has won 4 games in a row on the road. They've never won 5 in a row in the history of their franchise. 4 games in a row is a lot to ask. 5 is a lot more to ask of anybody. I'm not saying they're going to lose tonight. I'm saying that the odds are they're going to win. I mean, they're favored a little bit. Detroit has lost 4 in a row. But if you're ever going to bet on something kind of contrarian, a team that's lost 4 in a row that's at home versus a team that's won 4 in a row on the road, it's not a bad time to kind of say maybe Detroit's going to win one here. Maybe St. Louis is due to lose one. And so maybe you play that opposite side of things and you take Mrazek and you take some Detroit skaters. The odds supported by Vegas or supported by paperwork are going to lean St. Louis, so you might catch a little bit of a contrarian thing there for some tournaments, take a few Detroit skaters. And you know what? On a 4-game slate, maybe you jump in and you find that everybody in the world thought exactly like I did. So I will say this, these lines are going to shuffle up. Agostino and Barbashev have supposedly been put kind of on the same line. I don't know who they're going to be centered by. I know Laterra is being reunited with Tarasenko, so there's a little bit of shuffling around going on. You might not want to believe this 100% for gospel. You may consult like a leftwinglock.com and run some line combos after the morning skate and see what the beat writers picked up on. You might want to follow them on Twitter too. Some of the beat writers, J.P. Rutherford, I think is one. You can search that name on Twitter. He's a very, very good beat writer for St. Louis. Philly and Calgary, dive down into here, and you're going to see that Philadelphia is kind of reeling lately, and Calgary's not that much better. However, head-to-head, last 10 times they've met, Philly has a 6-1-3 record against Calgary, so that might, again, lead towards looking at some Philly skaters. Calgary has, they don't really shoot a lot, but they don't really give up a lot of shots either. The last 4 weeks or so, which is a time frame I tend to look at, Calgary has given up a ton of points, third most to teams against, so that might lead towards some Philly. It's not really an exciting game one way or the other for me. Probably take a couple skaters here or there, but I'm not anticipating some massive explosion to where I want to be stacking lines in tournaments or cash, either one. If I jump over to Florida and San Jose, I will say that San Jose does receive an uptick in shots on goal when it comes to the head-to-head matchup with Florida, meaning they average about 30 shots on goal across the season per game. However, when they've played Florida the last 10 times, they've averaged about 32, 33 shots per game. So that lets you know that maybe there's a favorable matchup there. Maybe we'll get a few more events, a few more shots on goal out of these guys. It's not much to go on, but it does indicate that maybe they play a little bit better against Florida. However, Florida has the 6-3 record over the last 9 games against San Jose, so maybe there's nothing to it at all. I will say that with the over-under of a 5 and with the 160, 150 favorite here, that Martin Jones is squarely in play as a chalk goalie. But again, I'm not going to just lean too heavily into it. I'm not really a big fan of these goalies today. There's not an overwhelming favorite that I'm really big on. If I had to look, I would say, again, maybe a Jake Allen, the way the Blues have been playing lately, is as good an option as any. People will laugh at that. I will tell you that Allen has won 3 out of his last 4 starts, 4 out of his last 5 starts, and he's got a shutout in those last 3, and in the last 4 victories, he's got 2 one-goal games. He's only allowed 3 goals 1 time. So St. Louis's defense is playing better, and Detroit's not exactly an offensive juggernaut. But you want a narrative, Detroit? Last game in Joe Louis Arena for the Blues, and they used to have quite the rivalry. So, maybe there's a little bit of something there. Maybe Detroit gets a little up for the game. Really a talkie. It's got a lot of volatility to it. Who the hell knows? Offenses I'm looking for on paper, kind of all balanced. I'm not really into anyone particularly. I'm not really into any goalie in particular. So if we jump over to, let's look at the pricing structure really quick on DraftKings at some of these goalies. And I'll tell you that, okay, Bob is in a good spot. Jake Allen's in a good spot. Is the $100 worth saving? No. Martin Jones, same price as Jake Allen. These are coin flips, these 3 guys. If Brian Elliott gets the start, is it worth? Am I that confident that Calgary's going to beat Philly that I'm willing to save, say, $300? No. So, again, this is why we kind of pay up for goalies. There's just not enough of a cost difference in there to really entice me to come way down into here and look at a guy, like Neverth or something. I mean, whatever. Mrazek in tournaments, sure. That $1,000, that's a big deal. So if you think that, Detroit's going to get right, you might drop down to Mrazek. That's not actually a bad deal because, again, the incentive is there to save that $1,000. Saving 100, 200, not so much. Saving 1,000, absolutely. Looking again back at what I like to do when I'm trying to find skaters is I call up the Roto Grinders tool here. I go to the skater stats. I click on the site I'm going to play. I click on the NHL tab. I load up 4 weeks. I can look at last week if I want to, but for the sake of the video, and we're going to have to go to probably part 2 for the lineup building. For the sake of the video, I go to 4 weeks. It's a little bit longer than 1 week. It's less than the season. Gives me some recency, but also smooths out the variance of a day-to-day action. And I start looking for value. I sort by salary, and I scroll down to the bottom page. I start looking for guys that stand out. I look at a $3,100 guy averaging, 3.3 points per game over the last 4 weeks, and I'm going to take a look at that. I'm also going to look at another one that I found here previously in Magnus Paajarvi, 2.7K at almost 4 points per game over the past 4 weeks. Low. He's only played 3 games, but I mean, come on. That's worth looking into as a punt. So that's why I called these two guys up. We'll look at Levo here first, and we'll go into his game log. Let's make sure 1.1 points over his last 10 games is not for a 3K salary. It's not what you're looking for. But we want to make sure he hasn't been running really, really good recently. We want to make sure there aren't a lot of ups and downs for a cash player, but for a GPP player, we want to see some upside. So when we click on this, look at there, we see a 9.5 last game out, scored a goal, 2 assists. I mean, had a big game. What did he do before that? How steady is he? Nothing, 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 nothing. So he had one big outburst, and that's what pumped his point total up. So you've got to look at these things instead of just seeing the guy on this page and going, oh my God, I got to roster him. No, you need to look at the numbers. You look at Magnus Paajarvi, same thing, almost 2 points. Yeah, I mean, value-wise, that's close to like 2/3, 3/4 of his salary. That would be 2.7 points would be a 1-to-1 ratio, and the 1.7 is over 2/3 of the way there. So that brings value and it frees up salary for us to really jump into a lot of other areas as long as it's consistent. So when we look, bang, bang, bang. Last 3 games that he's played, he's been on a little bit of a roll. Now there's some zeros in there, but look at this. No time on ice. 0, 0, 0. So those don't count. Last times he's not getting a lot of minutes, had an okay game, had nothing. So you don't really know. I wouldn't say he's the most reliable guy in the world, but I'd say he's been reliable lately. And for cash, the way St. Louis has been playing, if he's got any kind of power play time at all, which he doesn't, he might be worth maybe throwing in there, depending on who he shuffles around lines with. You might look at it as a punt. Now, I wouldn't punt him in tournaments because I don't really need him. I need ceiling. I need 5, 6, 7 point upside. I'm not really getting it unless he scores a goal. Which would be great, but I'd rather play him in cash because if he gets a 0.5 at 2.7K, he's not killing me. For what he allows me to do at the 2.7, which is spend up and grab a 7K, 8K guy, he's actually kind of helping me out because I would take the average of the 7K and 8K guy, say it's 7K, and now between the two guys, we're at a 9.7, so 2.7 times 7K. Let's go find a 7K guy. That's not a goalie. Say Pavelski in San Jose. And let's look at his game log and look at his floor. Not great lately, but 3.5, 6.5, 3.5, 9, 7. If we catch this stretch and we get 5, 6 points out of him, you add that to maybe the 1 point that a Paajarvi might get you, and now you got 6 or 7 points for the 9K that I told you about. 6 is 2/3 of 9. Now you combine those two guys together, their salaries and their production, and now you're back on value. But you get the upside of a number 1 guy in Pavelski and the 9 points, when you don't really get hurt by a 1 point performance out of that third line Magnus Paajarvi guy. If that makes sense, you kind of can use these guys as units. Combine their salaries, combine their point totals, and that's how you're trying to build lineups in blocks and chunks like that. So anyway, guys, that's kind of part 1. I want to go ahead and cut it off here. We'll come back and we'll run through 15 minutes worth of options for our VIPs. I'll lock that one up. If you are interested in becoming a VIP and you want to see a little bit more of how we do this and get a few more of these tips and nuggets and whatnot, go to dfsarmy.com and take a look at our VIP program. You might find it something that you're looking for. We're a community-first team that really builds the player up. We handle new guys. We handle experienced guys. We've got coaches in all the sports. We've got a great optimizer that has been on fire lately with NBA. We have an awful lot of tips and tricks and fundamentals that we share inside our Slack forums. And we've got a lot of content that we throw out on the web too, strategy articles and whatnot. So, again, check out dfsarmy.com. Follow me at Chapadong on Twitter. Let's talk a little bit. Let's see if this isn't a community for you. For those of you that are already VIPs, come back in a few minutes. We'll put out part 2, and we'll build some lineups. Take care, guys.